Welcome to our fourth episode of Bridging the Divide, the podcast or the LinkedIn Live or whatever you want to call it. I'm really excited today because we're going to be talking about, as usual, how we can do a better job of driving digital transformation by collaborating between business and technical teams. And one of the things that usually holds us back here is that the non-technical folks are like, well, that's the technical folks' job. And the technical folks are like, yeah, that's our job. When in fact, these guys need to be collaborating, both teams, right? There can't be silos if you're actually trying to do effective digital transformation. And even though people, all of us, are using technology that we have no idea how it works every day. I don't care who you are. Every day you use some piece of technology that you do not know how it works, whether it's a microwave oven, an airplane, an iPhone. There's something that, like, honestly, I've been working in technology for my entire career. If my microwave breaks, my solution is to go buy another one, right? Like, this is not something I'm going to solve on my own. And it's not something that I should try to be solving in my business dealings either, right? Like, I'm not the technical expert at this point on most of what I'm doing. So what I'm excited to talk about today is the fact that we, all of us, have been given a great gift. Generative AI, and specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about ChatGPT today, is a somewhat technical technology wrapped up in a very user-friendly, non-technical kind of wrapper. And it means that for folks who want to explore what technology can do, but don't want to get into how it works, this is a great opportunity to really jump in and get to use it. So today I'm thrilled to have with us Tonya Long, who is the author of the upcoming book, AI and the New Oz, Leadership's Journey to the Future of Work. So we're going to be talking about how people can really be using generative AI today, from today, how we should be using it from today, and how we can use this to be thinking differently about starting our digital transformation journeys or continuing them. So welcome, Tonya. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be here.
Now, I just gave everyone the name of your book and a little background on what we're talking about, but can you give a little bit more of your impressive bio and let folks know, how you came to be this sort of, let's say, PR agent for generative AI?
Well, I love that. And Sam can give me a call, and I would love to take everyone up on that. But you're the first one who has given me that honorary title. I have been 25 years in tech. We'll stop counting after 20. And I'm someone that change finds me. I'm the one in the room leading technical teams with a master's degree in public policy. So I'm the one who prides myself on not writing code. I When I look back, it's always when you're able to look back and you see what your life has encompassed. And when I look back, I've always led change because I love that that this series is about bridging, because I've always been the bridge that bridged teams to their future. And it has typically been a future that they didn't want. And anybody who watches this is going to be nodding that knows me, because it's been after tough times. It's either a large M&A or turnarounds. I never get to do the fun stuff. I never get to do the, whoa, look what, the stock's going to 400. I am never part of that. I am always part of tough times and delivering real messages. And the thing is, I think what's happening now with generative AI, it's kind of a tough time. Not everybody is happy about this. And change is hard. Change represents potential loss, a lot of fear of change or not being able to keep up. We'll talk more about that. But in my 20-something years, I've led a lot of transformation, just like you, Bridge. A lot of technical transformation, but at the root of it, I've led people into the future. And as AI really, as generative AI started really coming on hard and strong first of this year, I said, what is this? And I got sucked in. And lo and behold, here we are. And I didn't really, have a lot of control over it. It change found me, and here we are today.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting point. Like,
Yeah.
this does feel different for me, right? My whole life has been about change, right? I'm as you are, the person who's always there when something is transforming. But this one does feel a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been sort of a surge in people thinking about transformation, I think. How
Mm-hmm.
would you characterize what's different today
Yeah.
from what you've seen in the past?
Speed, scale, and access. That rolls off the tongue because that's what I've been writing about in the book. But this thing really, the poster child for a lot of this is Chat GPT. And they launched the big iteration. The big launch was 3.5, and that happened on November 30th. Anybody who's been in tech knows we don't launch stuff. We put moratoriums on things around mid-November. We don't want people touching product. I don't think they expected all this to happen like it did. That's my personal belief, because it went wildfire, and they had 1 million users signed up in 5 days. And when you look at all the graphics that are out there, there's never been a product of all of our household name products. Nothing has ever had 1 million users in 5 days. I think it was 173 million users within, I think it was by February. So the speed, the scale, and then access. Bridget, you and I have led digital transformation, big enterprise, big scale, IBM, Akamai, and Avaya. We're talking about big companies that you and I have been at. But we had this, here's my phone. We had this in our back pockets. This people downloaded for free. They had it available, and people were using this the next day. It didn't take a big advisory company with a big name and a big budget months working, in the back office with the strategy teams to figure it out. So it's that access point of people being able to use it and doing things with it, that it was almost like the whole world pivoted, and we had high schoolers writing papers with it. We had office workers, reviewing contracts with it. And then we had leaders going, what is it? And so that scale and access made this entirely different than all of the digital transformation that I think we've been used to, where control was levied because it was expensive and it was big infrastructure, and the corporate teams addressed it when they were called on. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. I mean, it is so interesting to think about the accessibility change in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what this makes possible. Now, I think a lot of people are scared of what that might mean, but I keep going back to when I started a long time ago as a consultant, and I was like, oh my gosh, how did people do these projects before they had Excel to do all the number crunching? And somebody's like, they didn't do all this number crunching.
No.
And I think that's where we are, is it's not that ChatGPT or generative AI or AI at all is going to replace people. It's just going to change what the expectations are. And
Yes.
it's going to change what the people do versus what the systems do. Nobody's scared of Excel taking over their job. People are scared of Excel taking over their laptop, maybe, but not their job. But it is interesting how this becomes something that really is easy for people to get their hands around. I mean, speaking of that, as you've been writing the book, I think you've seen a lot of different use cases. And I mean, when I started playing around with it, I was just using pure ChatGPT, help me brainstorm, help me do stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how people could start, if they aren't comfortable with ChatGPT, how they could start learning to use it, and what kinds of cool things it can do easily?
Well, we got 2 more hours. I mean, I sat down. I was on a camping trip last week up in the Sierras. I sat down with a 75-year-old grandmother. She's a kayaking grandmother, so she's pretty cool. But her granddaughter, who's a 20-year-old in college, had been all chat GPT, and she just kind of waved her off. And so we sat down, and I had my monitor set up in my RV. I have an Airstream. And I said, what do we want to do? Because she'd never seen it. And I said, let's talk about a plan for how do we buy an RV. And so I just talked. I just said, how do we build it? How do we buy an RV? What would we look for? Help build a plan, put it in table forms. I'm just talking. And she says, you're just talking to it. You're not. I said, yeah, that's pretty much what you do. It's very conversational. So I demonstrated it for this 75-year-old grandmother. It did its thing. Anybody who's watching this already knows, we're all here because we're interested in it. We've all seen it. She was mesmerized. And then I said, after it put out this beautiful table and made recommendations, and she was amazed. And then I said, ChatGPT, I said, now you're the editor of the top senior living magazine in the country. Take all this information and convert it to an article about, going on the road as a senior and how you need to prepare and go buy an RV and hit the road and live your best life. And sure enough, it pushed out this gorgeous sales job of an article. And she's like, how did you know it would do that? I said, it can do anything. I said, but watch this. I said, who's your favorite period author? She said, I don't know, Jane Austen. I said, perfect. I said, rewrite this in the voice of Jane Austen. And she's like, no. I said, it'll do Bart Simpson if you'd rather have Bart Simpson. And so we wrote and she saw the breadth and the scale and the fun, and she's hooked. And she's been wanting to write a story about her family. She has Italian heritage, and there's, stories about her family's genealogy and history. She's ready to go. Those are just different use cases of how you can play. I think it goes from that to health related things. I think, you get much more serious. I'm pretty open about being a type 1 diabetic. And when you've been a type 1 diabetic for years and years, and you get to be the age I am, things start to accumulate. And the last time I went in to see my specialist, I had done a ChatGPT consolidation of stacked symptoms. And I took that to my specialist to say, here's ChatGPT's take on things, because I also asked ChatGPT, what should I be asking? Not just here are my symptoms, what's wrong, but what other questions should I be looking for, related to some anti-inflammatory stuff. That's the common thing now that's happening with, getting to be 50. And it's amazing because every doctor really knows their vertical of expertise. And, doctors hated it when Dr. Google was taking over, but Dr. ChatGPT is far better because of the things that it brings into, what's, the corpus of information that's available. So I think as you familiarize yourself with all the different just things people are doing to I call it play, because those two things aren't business examples. Those are life examples. If you're out interviewing, get on FinChat.io, because those of you who've ever gone and looked at Edgar filings and made, Bridget, I know you've done this, looked at 10Ks and manually compiled information about a company you're going to interview at, and FinChat.io arranges it beautifully. You're like, oh my God, I used to do this manually, and it's beautiful, and it will give you an assessment of the strategy of the company and all these different things, and it's all seamless and beautiful, and the information that is now at our fingertips that saves us valuable time, and that really assesses and analyzes and compares data in a very, 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 very intelligent and articulate way. It's life-changing.
So I 100% agree. I think one of the concerns that some of the leadership had when it first became popular, and when many companies just sort of put the brakes on it, saying you can't use it in a corporate environment because we don't understand it yet, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's due to things like the recent case where the judge censored two lawyers who had used it as they were researching a case, and ChatGPT had invented, I think,
Yes.
6 cases with details: who the judge was, who the judge was, what had
Yeah.
happened, what the outcome was, and so it looked like real case law. And
Yep.
the lawyer thought he was doing enough by saying, he actually asked ChatGPT, "Are these real cases?" And ChatGPT said, "Yes, they weren't." So, how should leaders and the people themselves be thinking about the guardrails that you need in order to not misuse ChatGPT or not get in trouble by using ChatGPT for things it's not good for?
I mean no disrespect, but I have to say my truth. You don't ask ChatGPT if it's telling the truth. I mean, that's to me, for me, for that's just common sense. I do believe so. It's a published fact from OpenAI that GPT-4 is far more, and this is common sense. I think common wisdom. GPT-4 is far more accurate and hallucinates far less. So we understand that. But my experience has been most of what ChatGPT hallucinates is wildly funny. It's like ridiculous. When it hallucinates the majority of the time, it's just absurd, and you're like, and it's so you catch it and I think the reason that is the majority of what I find myself using GPT for is brainstorming. So it's not giving me facts. It's giving me angles. It's giving me talking points or things to consider. It isn't things that would be wrong. You follow? But I will say I had my own experience this weekend, Bridget. So you and I haven't talked about this, but but I almost got busted, and I don't mind telling it because it's a good call to truth for me. Uh, there's a chapter in my book where I take in the Oz book, I take different characters from Oz, and I talk about their leadership principles, and then I take a modern day leader. One of my modern, I think this is funny. I don't mind telling it because I have nothing to ever hide. One of my modern day leaders is Richard Branson. And that's one of the leaders I know the least about. He's just the least accessible to me. We got Nelson Mandela. We've got Mr. Rogers in there. We is me and GPT-4. But I had Richard Branson, and they talked about Richard Branson's. We talked about Richard Branson's Rainbow, started with a C, Rainbow Coalition, Rainbow something, and GPT had recommended that for me, and I went with it. We talked about his building teams with diversity, his using different teams to save his different businesses when he had different businesses that had gone off the rails. Something said to me, you need to touch that. Well, apparently there was another Branson who was with the Black Panthers who had the Rainbow Coalition or it was a C word. And I was like, oh my goodness, Richard Branson, the business magnate, the CEO of multiple businesses that we know, rather flamboyant. And I believe the rainbow thing connected for me without me verifying it prior to this weekend, because he's very much an island vibe kind of guy. When you see his personality, there's a whole lot around the islands. And I just associated it with that. Oh, no. There's another Branson man in history that was Black Panther that had a rainbow sea, I can't pull the name, team. And I was like, oh my God, I almost went to market with a book. So I think the thing is we have to verify things that we don't know. And I didn't know that. And I'm glad I verified it. And there are leaders. I will say there's a study that came out this weekend. There's a lot of surveys, data starting to come out. And there was a survey that came out, and there's a whole bunch of executives with a high percentage. And it was somewhere close to 50% of this sample that weren't using it because it wasn't accurate enough yet. And I think that's garbage, because there are also people who sit at boardroom tables and inflate their sales forecasts. We know this to be true. It happens all the time. People aren't accurate, just like this tool made a mistake. So, that's not a reason not to use it. I edited my Rainbow Coalition out of chapter 2. When you read about Dorothy, you can laugh about Richard Branson. There's no mention of a rainbow anywhere. But these things are going to happen, and I think we just have to be mindful and stay on top of the data. Where I fault those attorneys was they had their chance to pull back. They had their shot at going, judge, let me look into that.
Yeah.
And instead they pressed forward and they said, GPT. And I've had those fights early on with GPT. GPT, who is this? This is Tonya Long. Well, who is Tonya Long? And at some point, GPT thought I was an Indian public official who had had 2 children who had been killed in a tragic car accident. Now, it's true that I've done a lot of work in India, but I have never had children and never had a tragic car accident in my history. So I don't know where it pulled it, but
yeah. I mean, I think it's about understand for leaders who are thinking about how to use it. And I think this becomes especially important because it's such a accelerator for transformation.
Yes, it is.
Companies that choose not to use it are going to be left behind. But companies who choose to use it without guardrails are exposing themselves to unnecessary risk. And so the question becomes, how do you think about what those guardrails are?
Well, companies that are using it in the course of doing the business that makes them money are creating their own environments. I mean, GPT-4 was released in mid-March, March 15th or 16th of this year. And on the same day, Morgan Stanley put out a press release. They had been working with OpenAI to create their own ring-fenced environment. And I applaud them for doing that. I think a lot of companies are going that direction. It was 100,000 documents that are curated documents within the Morgan Stanley financial framework that are their sanitized set of documents they want their financial advisors to use as their source of truth. So what they're doing is using the large language model framework and syntax, if you will, to research only that body of data. And it's clean, and they're going to have their own process. They do have their own processes for, what comes in, what comes out. So it's clean, and it will never be contaminated so long as they both shall live. And that's the way companies, highly regulated industries like that are going to have to work, so that it's not, so that it doesn't become at the whim of a 14-year-old who's doing day trading. And I think that that allows the tens of thousands of financial advisors with that very large company to feel comfortable with the data, and for their clients to feel confident about the information they're getting. It's a beautiful answer, and it'll scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it is an easy way to put in guardrails that nobody's going to ignore, right? Because they can't. That they're using something that has the guardrails built in.
Absolutely.
What are some other ways that you see companies already using generative AI or ChatGPT?
I just mentioned the Morgan Stanley example. I saw an interesting example. It's not in use yet, but I saw an interesting thing this weekend where it was in Europe, but they're about to pilot in a large city using GPT to answer 911 calls only when there's a major event. And imagine this, a big building is burning and everybody calls, and that clogs up the lines. And I think this is great for public 800 lines, for 911 lines, because you only staff those for a certain level of peak, but that level of peak magnifies by, I don't know, 8 or 10x when something massive is occurring. And so they're testing GPT to answer those calls and say, are you calling about the fire on 3rd Street at this building? We are very aware. This is the information we have. Do you have any other information? No. And then move that caller on without taking up valuable human bandwidth. And I think that's great. Now, the problem I had, and this is, I think it's just us settling into things as a society, is the article was like, and the caller will never even know that they were talking to a machine. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with talking to a machine. For me, operating with efficiency is the right thing to do. People need to understand you don't have to talk to a human. If suddenly what is normally a 20 call volume call center becomes a 200 call center, we've got to operate well. And those are peak events that need to be handled digitally. But that was their idea of value to the customer. Their intentions are good. So anyway, I thought that was very interesting. I think we're really going to see massive shifts in healthcare, and I can't wait for those. I posted something that Sundar had done a big pitch in the last few days. Google's been building on those verticals for a while now. But I think the consolidation of wearables with the large language data model sets that they have, with what they can do with cloud, and our willingness now to go into the performance levels that we can. I think what we're going to be able to do with healthcare and reporting and monitoring with an aging population, I think it's going to be amazing.
I think you're right, and I think. I know we're really almost at the top of the hour, and
No.
I could keep talking about this forever. So I don't want to end, but cognizant of the time. For me, what this comes to is, how do we help people understand that this is a tool that they have to help them think about transformation in a more accelerated way, to help them think about changing their business in a more accelerated way. And it can become a first step to a large digital transformation project, or it can just be a step on its own that gets you where you need to go, because all you needed was that burst capacity for your 911 call, or a new set of tools for your sales agents to use, whatever it is. And so how do we help people understand how to take that first step? And how to really get started?
I think it's all about owning it. I think it's about using it, getting comfortable with it, and I want people to start at the bottom. And that sounds awful, but I mean it in the best possible way. Start at the planning your vacation, looking at what's in your fridge and making a meal. Start at the silly stuff, because it moves quick. Start at what makes you happy, at something that's fun. In the business world, start with play. In the book, I've got lists at the end of every chapter of things you can do, and like run competitions with your teams on building images. And you may be a technical or non-technical team in your business, but have everybody work on Midjourney one month, free and fun, and run a picture competition for what my child will not be wearing for Halloween. Let people have some fun, play, build confidence. As you build confidence, you will come into your own about your point of view, about how it can affect your business, how you can scale automation, right? When you own it, you're not going to be waiting for the transformation guys that sit up in the ivory tower to come and tell you what to do with your business. That is my dream for everybody in this, is that they know what they want to do. We are already building what we can with the tools that we have available organically. And then when the transformation guys do come knocking, we invite them to sit down and we show them what we need. That's where I want us to all get to. And with these tools, I think we can.
I mean, it seems for me, my whole life is about, how do we do a better job of collaborating? How do we bridge that divide between the different groups? And everything I hear you say just sings to that, because it's about how do we get people more comfortable? How do we get people more enabled? How do we get more people at the table doing these things? And so I just really hope that everybody out there sees ChatGPT, generative AI, everything that's happening now as a real opportunity to say, my company will lose in my market unless I continue to
I own it.
transform.
I own it.
And I
Nobody
own
else comes in and
it.
tells me. I know my business.
Right.
That's right.
You own the business. You know your customers, you know what you do. You need to understand where that transformation can go. And you need all the tools in your repertoire, and you need the collaboration from everyone on the team. But if you're not there as part of it, as the business owner, as you know, the person who knows the customer, knows the product,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to happen properly. It's going to go off in some wonky direction.
And
so
you're not going to believe in it. Your people are not going to believe in it, and it's going to fall flat. I believe that's what we've been doing for 20 or 25 years.
I think it's we've made it, or it's been harder than it needs to be.
I agree.
And I think this does give people a real ability to see how technology can be less divisive in some ways, right? Technology is for those guys over there, and business is for us over here. This is let's work together.
But I have to say, that's a big shift.
Oh yes,
That's a big shift for the people who are used to coming in and saying, "I've got your plan." So be patient. Give a lot of grace. Stand your ground with what you need. But remember, that has not been the way. So you're going to have to explain, I've been thinking about this a long time. I've been working with my team a long time. We've got some ideas for you this time, and give some grace. We're all going to have to go through this transition together.
I think that's awesome. I think, thinking about it as a team rather than as silos, and thinking about it as, hey, let's work together to get the right answer. That's where we need to get to. And the funny thing is, for everybody worried about ChatGPT displacing humans, if instead what it does is actually bring people together, and and so instead of eliminating humans from the equation, it eliminates silos. That's golden. That's what we've all been looking for the past, as you're saying, a couple of decades.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we're over time. Before we go, I do want to ask, we've talked about your book.
Oh, yeah.
How can people listening get their hands on
it? It should be up on Amazon in the next few days. It'll be ready for release mid-July. I'm waiting for some legal approvals from Disney. My foreword is being written by someone who works for the Disney company, so we got to get legal approvals there. So mid-July, it should be ready for purchase. So just watch my LinkedIn profile, and I'll be putting as much as I can out at that venue to let people know.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. Always
It's
wanted
going to be a lot of
live.
fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, Tonya, thank you so much. I mean, I think this has been such a great view of how easy it is to both use ChatGPT. I mean, if you've got a 75-year-old woman who's, pretty much able to do it, whether or not it's written in Jane Austen language, then I'm thinking really anybody out there listening can do it.
It's about desire. It's about curiosity. It's about letting go of ego and fear, and just giving it a try. You cannot go wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone who joined us. Hope that you leave this and go try to do something that you haven't done before on ChatGPT, even if it's just signing up for ChatGPT in the first place. But yeah, check out what it can do and start talking about it at work and seeing how you can imagine transforming your business using ChatGPT and other generative AI. Thanks everyone for coming today, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks,
Thank you, Bridget. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.